What's going on, hustlers? Back at you guys with another video. We got another interview coming at you guys today. And per usual, I've got my right hand man, Mr. Sam White, here with me. And then we have another special guest with us. So, Sam, why don't you take it away and do your thing, my man?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back on your screens once again. Yeah, we're joined with Davis, so we'll jump straight in. Davis, I'll let you introduce yourself and just tell us how you got into GovCon.
Yeah, I'm 20 years old. I'm in college right now. I go to the University of Iowa. I'm going into my junior year right now. And when I was around a little bit late into my freshman year of college, my one of my buddies from my home county, he's in the Air Force, and he told me that we should start a business in government contracting. And then we spent around like a year, maybe less, doing some information searching on kind of really what it was and what we could do. And then we looked into doing some services and went the kind of, I feel like the traditional route. We saw Eric Coffey first, and then went through a
Shout
ton
out
of
the
his
OG.
information. And then we
Yeah.
saw Damon's like panel on Eric Coffey, and then we kind of thought it would be easier for us since we're a little younger. We have less money or capital to play with. That services would be, I mean, products would be a lot easier. And then we paid for the course and we got into it pretty quickly. And we started bidding on contracts probably like a week after finishing Damon's course. And here we are. Since it's only been around 4 months since I've taken the initial course.
Amazing, amazing. And just be more specifically, what kind of aspect of government contracting are you in now?
It's just hardware, kind of like small material. I'm working out of my house in at school, so I don't have a ton of room. I can't really be, I don't know, bidding on giant items. So I stuck to kind of small hardware, no like bolts, screws, kind of things that I can things that are small enough for me to handle right now. And right now
Gotcha.
that's what we're in, but we're kind of trying to move into other areas. But hardware is basically where we're at.
Got you. And for the people that like maybe don't necessarily know, kind of the progression. So you started like 4 months ago, and then like where is the business like now? Just so people have context for like what you've done in 4 months. Well, being younger than me, you started around the same time I started, but you've had a lot more success than I had at that age. So like for context, could you tell the people a little bit about what you've done in like the past 4 months?
Yeah, so we started bidding probably late February, like 28th into the early March, and then since then we've won 11 contracts kind of in groups. So like a month went by, I think a month and a half went by, and we won four contracts in a week, and then another month, and then one contract, and then the next month it was like five contracts in a few days. So they were all kind of grouped together up until now. We have 11 so far, and we're kind of working on just upping the price or the ticket of the items that we're bidding on, just so we can make make more profit. But at that point, it was more about just winning the contracts. So I was just bidding on anything and everything that I could kind of feasibly see working. But I mean, it was 11. It was 11 contracts from the point that we started bidding up until now. So
Okay.
overall, it was probably 10% of the contracts that we bid on, we won.
So the numbers make sense. It is about in the beginning. It is about that 10% win rate that we talked about, and in about 4 months, I mean, on average, you're averaging like about like what 3 contracts a month. and then you're doing it while you're in school, and you're doing it at a younger age than I was. So just some context for you guys out there, just kind of like the clip that he's working at, and then kind of like he was establishing proof of concept, and then now Davis and I were working together to do some higher ticket items and stuff like that, which we'll get to later on in the interview. But Sam, you could go back
Yeah,
to doing
it's
your thing. I
crazy
just want to
progress
give
in
the
the
people some
last
context.
4 months. Crazy progress in the last 4 months. But Davis, go into just a bit more detail of, like you mentioned, you were kind of researching it with a buddy of yours for about a year, looking at different things.
Yeah.
So what was life like for you before you got into this?
Well, I mean, I kind of knew that I was going to start a business in college. I just didn't really know what it was. So, I mean, that was kind of already set in my mind. And he sort of reached out to, his name is Devin Armstead. He's in the Air Force. He reached out to me and he was like talking to, I think, some of the, I don't know, sergeants or people in the military with him. And they are sort of on the other end of what we do. And he asked them about it. Obviously, we watched War Dogs, which was a big help. Uh, so
Good
that
film.
kind of got us into it and a little bit more interested. Yeah. And I mean, it was kind of just like looking at YouTube videos, just like scraping anything that you possibly can. Because I mean, in my experience, there's really little to no information out there, like detailed enough to get you actually started. There's a bunch of broad videos and information about what you can do and possibly get into, but there is very limited information and people willing to give the information for free about how to actually start, like in the details, information on how you get registered and how you can find a market to sell in. And it took a while, a decent maybe 8 months, something like that, to find someone who we thought was sort of qualified enough or that we believed could provide us the right amount of information to get started. And that's kind of where we were before we bought the course for Damon's Ignored to Award. At that point, we started the business in September, and it took us a while to get to that point, but we got there eventually. It didn't, in retrospect, it didn't take too long.
Nah, I mean when you're building a business, everybody's like, yeah, it's gonna in 90 days I'm gonna start absolutely just printing money, and then I'm gonna be able to quit my job. But that's like not how
Yeah.
life works in the real world. I do try my best to put out like as much free information like as I can. I do try to get like 3 videos out there a week. But then during the boot camp, I think I did the best that I could of like giving you guys the information that you needed to actually like get started, and then like take the instruction and then use it to like generate like tangible things, right? Because like you said, there's a lot of people that throw information out there, and it's like super broad or like super surface level information that like doesn't
Hmm.
actually translate to like winning contracts or like generating dollars. So that was one thing that I wanted to make sure was like, okay, you're not paying for me to rehash the same shit that you see like on my YouTube channels or that you see from like a Google search, right? I wanted to make sure that we're doing like a really good job of like delivering like quality information that has like a practical application for you guys. So I'm glad to know that 4 months later, you're kind of still in the game, and then now we're discussing kind of the next steps and then what life is going to look like as the business starts to progress.
And Davis, you mentioned like during that time you were struggling to find people with, almost like trustworthy information or specific information. What were your biggest concerns before you started working with us?
Um, I think personally, it was a little bit about money because there's a ton of people who offer information about government contracting, but like they're 10,000, 20, that like 50, that I mean, there are some people who offer courses that are just way too expensive, and I couldn't conceptually see the return on investment for putting in like $10,000 for a course. And I mean, I would go onto this panel I saw with Eric Coffey. It was at the time, it was probably like 6 months after that video had been posted. And I did a little bit of research. I looked at him on LinkedIn. I saw his website to see who he was really. And it made a little bit more sense because whenever I would look at other people who were offering courses, they're just like, I don't know. When I would watch their videos and the puzzle pieces wouldn't really fit completely. The videos that I watched weren't convincing enough that they could offer the information that would return a like $10,000 investment for a course. And I
Hmm.
mean, I saw an Ignored to Award or Damon's course on Namyad, which was relatively very cheap in comparison to everything else. And I thought that the return that I would get from that was definitely well worth the below $2,000 price that I got it for. It was uh, getting an entire business concept and basically like launching your business with a concept that works and is never going away, because it's just with the Department of Defense. So I found that it was probably the best choice, and I feel
Hmm.
like I was right. And in terms of starting this
Sure,
business.
sure. Again, you mentioned like when you were looking at other people in comparison, big thing was like justifying the return on investment, right? And you said like doing more research into those people and their businesses. You said there like the puzzle pieces didn't really match up. So besides like feeling you had more trust in us, which is great to hear, was there any other reasons of what made you decide to go ahead with the Ignore to Award at the time?
Yeah, uh, I watched Damon's panel and I felt like he was more genuine in offering the information up front. Like I watched tons of videos about how to get started in government contracting, and it's like they do like a hook line. They offer you a little bit, but they don't give you enough to like actually see what you might get out of working with that person. They'll offer you a little bit of like, oh, this person made this much money, this person made this much money, and then they don't tell you anything about kind of what happens or how to do it logistically. And I felt when I watched the panel, it was more of details about like this is how this works. These are the kinds of things that are available and what you can do with the Defense Logistics Agency, and this is how you kind of would get started with them, and this is what you can offer. And I felt it was a little bit more genuine and straightforward.
Mm, mm, for sure, for sure. And like they mentioned there, like you guys have been working more recently about scaling your business up, the next steps for you. So, where's your company at now? What's changed, and how have you, I guess, got to this point, and what's next?
Right, so when we started bidding on contracts, it was just me and Devin. He's my business partner, and since then, we have some of our friends at home. They're also in college. They're helping us a little bit with sort of looking for contracts that we can bid on,
Oh,
just so
that's
that we
news to
can kind
me.
of,
I did not know that.
yeah,
That's news.
it's a little tough. Some of them they're also in the Air Force in deployment, and then also some of them are in college over the summer. So it's like not all of us can work together at the same time.
Mhm.
So we kind of try to take a little bit of spare time towards finding contracts. And right now we're working on surplus material. Right now, that's just me looking to see if we can do surplus material because that would
Which,
severely,
by the way, you got to schedule your next session. We sent you the link. We got to get on.
yeah.
We got to get on a call. We got to get on the call to talk about next steps
Hmm.
for that. But yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that you guys are scaling it, and now it sounds like you're not quite removing yourself from the business yet, obviously, but now because you have other people looking, you're starting to make that transition from like, okay, I have people working in the business, and then Davis himself can go learn about like surplus, so that way that essentially allows you to work on the business. And it's still like the same revenue stream because it's still product sales with DLA, but it's like a way to increase the revenue. So now I think you're starting to get a taste of like the transition of having like leverage, and then it's like, okay, now I can do like business development stuff like that.
Hmm.
The progression of your, I think you're starting to kind of experience like the progression of like building a business, and it's always interesting because when you're in it you don't really realize it. You're kind of just like, okay, I'm kind of like figuring this thing out, and then like even when you're doing like $100,000 a month, like you're still kind of like, what the fuck am I doing, right? Like you never really think that you've like got it all figured out, or at least if you're a good entrepreneur, anyways, which I know you are. You never really walk around like, oh yeah, I've got this whole thing figured out because you're kind of in it. But I think
As
once you
soon
look
as you
back
do
on it in
something with
hindsight, you'll
stuff
be
in
like,
the place.
I think you'll start to look back on it and then be like, huh, that was when I think, the way that we started to run the business started to change, and then you were starting to think about like, different ways that you could innovate the business and kind of increase your output per like unit of time. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, I don't have the time to look like in hindsight. I'm scrambling right now, just like trying to figure everything out. So in the thick of it, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, it never changes. I'll tell you, that feeling doesn't go away. Like I
Right.
promise you, it doesn't go away. Whether you're doing $100 a month, $10,000 a month, or 100,000 a month, you're always like in the same boat. So welcome to the thick of it. Welcome to the trenches. But yeah, if this is where you are in 4 months, if you just multiply that growth times like three, and the growth is exponential, it'll be interesting to see where you are in a year from now.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then Davis, over the
Yeah,
past months. Oh, sorry, no, go on. Please continue.
oh, I was just gonna say I'm excited to get out of college so I can put more time towards it. Just because I've gotten here in 4 months and I feel like I could do a lot more if I'm not in college, but I'll finish college.
one step at a time. I gotta go get that degree before I'm a millionaire, kind of thing. I feel that. I feel that. Listen, I'm not take everything I say with a grain of salt. I dropped out to pursue this entirely. I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm just saying that that was kind of the route that I went, because like there's too much money to be made here, and I was like, I feel like the time that I'm spending like in a classroom or studying or something, I could be using to like go bid on contracts. So I ended up dropping out.
That's exactly
That's
how I feel.
Listen, your parents
Same
are probably
boat.
not going to support it in the beginning. Mine were not super keen on it, but
Yeah.
then eventually, when you start showing them like, "Hey, here's this purchase order for $50,000," then they're like, "Okay, well, I kind of see the vision now." So I was in the same boat.
I mean, I have a degree, and it's not come in any use. I
I'm
mean, I
more
now
I'm
work
more
with you, Day, and I don't know at one point have you asked me for my degree and my certificate.
Oh yeah, fuck no! I didn't one time ask you,
And no
"Hey,
one ever
what
has.
are your
No one
qualifications?"
ever has.
So it did
So
not come into
again,
play at all.
pinch of salt. But as someone who's got a degree, you don't need it to make money. That's for sure.
What's your
That is
degree in?
Business studies, even more pointless.
Okay.
he
Even more
studies
pointless.
business, and mind you, I work with a guy. I don't think I've ever once asked. I didn't even know he went to college up until 30 seconds ago.
Pointless. No one cares. But yeah. Anyway, staying on topic. Davis, 4 months later, 11 contracts won. What are some of the most important things that you've learned on that journey?
uh, I mean, personally, I think it's just how you use your time. Uh, I mean, I personally work the best because I'm an extremely anxious person. I feel like I'm not doing enough, so I think on top of school, school it's not it wasn't really enough. I didn't see the return on investment for it, and cramming that in with trying to start this business kind of just like propels me forward just because I have so much on my plate, and it kind of also it makes me a little bit more enthusiastic about working that I'm so busy. So it's just, I think being extremely busy and seeing it work in front of your eyes kind of just helps you put in more hours in working. It's, I don't know how to explain it very much. I've been in it for so little amount of time that I don't really conceptually know how it's been going on for the past 6 months to a year. But I think just kind of piling everything on and really not taking a break to look around or anything is kind of just that's how it works. That's how you move forward, in my opinion.
I mean, I think that's a really good piece of advice. Like, kind of just staying present, focusing on the task at head, and like putting your head down, right? And then like it's good to have a big picture perspective, but it's like if you can just win, if you can win that random Wednesday, right? And then it's like, okay, I finished class, and then I submitted this many bids, and then you win that next Thursday, and then you win that next Friday, and you're kind of just like in the trenches day in and day out, and you're not really thinking about like the end result, and you're just focusing on the process. I think that's where the results come from. So I mean, I think you did. I mean, 4 months and seeing the results. I mean, I think that is a large enough sample size to know that like the concept works, right? To establish proof of concept. So I mean, I think that's a pretty valuable piece of advice or insight that you've learned that maybe you have now that you didn't have in the beginning of the journey just because you hadn't started, but kind of just knowing like, hey, if I just win the day, right? Like if I just stay
Hmm.
busy and I win the day and I get everything done I need to get done today and then I do it again and the next day and the next day and the next day, that's when the real progression starts to happen rather than trying to get like big chunk plays at a time, as I like to call it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I'll say it really does help to make everything metric based. Uh, I remember we had a call a while ago, a few months ago, and it was about kind of how many you can output per day, and then kind of just doing the math on that based on how much you win on a percentage base. If you put out a certain amount of things, you will get back in a return a certain percentage of those contracts won, and it kind of just helps solidify kind of how it will work on a metrics basis as long as you output enough. And
Hmm.
I think that's probably the most helpful when you're starting and you're bidding on everything and you're not seeing anything and you get those unsuccessful offer emails and it's like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. I've said that probably a million fucking times, and I'll probably keep saying it. But I think that's also something really good that a lot of viewers can take away is like when you're not seeing those results, it's like, listen, if you make everything metric based and you just haven't hit your metrics yet, don't feel bad because it just the numbers don't make sense for you yet, right? If you haven't submitted the amount of bids that you need to then see that 10% win rate, it's like, listen, you just got to keep submitting more bids until they start to come in. And then I think the really cool thing about DLA that you haven't experienced yet, and it's just going to be a byproduct of time, is like the work that you put in over the past 4 months. Those are seeds that you've planted, and you can't harvest those seeds in the same season that you plant them, right? So the contract that you bid on in March, April, May, June, that's stuff that you're gonna win in July, August, September, October, November, December. So I think that's also a really cool thing that you'll get to experience as you're in the game longer because the metrics they don't just work for right now but they work for later on, and then you're building that pipeline of bids essentially, right? So you might submit a bid and then you win it a week later, but you might also submit a bid and then you win it 6 months later that you forgot about and it was very profitable when you decided you wanted to submit it, right? So I think relying on the metrics is always, a good way to go about it, especially as you said in the beginning when you're not seeing anything and you're like, well, fuck, is this going to work? Submit the number of bids that your company needs to hit and then reevaluate if it works. Don't just roll over because you're not getting the immediate results that you want.
would you agree that it kind of just takes all the emotion out of it? Because I think for a lot of people, when they start a business, it's so easy to get overly emotional because you just want it to work. You want to be the kind of the magic horse or whatever you want to call it that like flies out the gate and is a $1 million instantly.
Yeah,
Like it removes all of that because you just know do this, do this, do this, do this, get X result.
it does help. It does help, but I would say if you're starting a business, you should know that it's going to take you more than a couple of months. Like if you're going to start a business, I think maybe one of those requirements is to understand that it's not going to happen immediately. Like if you think that you're going to start a business and it's going to be making you rich in the next 2 months, then I don't really think you should be starting a business. I mean, you don't have the right like you're
Flip
not in the
that.
right
Yeah,
mind
flip
frame.
that. Clip
Yeah.
that,
They
chat.
didn't
Clip
teach me
that.
that at
Clip
college.
that.
They didn't
If
teach
you
me
think you're gonna get rich in a few months, don't start a business. Clip that. Clip that. That's a bar. Continue. But I just wanted to make sure they're aware of that.
Yeah.
Clip that, chat.
that. So, Davis, what's alongside of that? Like, was there any other challenges or hurdles that you came across on this journey that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I would say at the beginning when I was starting to bid on contracts and looking for companies to quote and kind of just figuring out a little bit of a style to work on, like kind of how I was going to generate quotes per day to bid on something while going to school. I kind of had to create a solid routine of waking up pretty early and emailing a ton of companies about quoting their material, going to school, and then coming back from school, and then before, you know, working on homework or going to do whatever I wanted to do for the rest of the day, bidding on X amount of contracts before that, and then just rinsing and repeating every day, kind of just like building a routine to fit it in my schedule that was already like a little bit packed with classes and homework and I hanging out with some of my friends and just miscellaneous activities that I do every day. And it's kind of just the routine changes extremely because you go from not bidding on anything or just learning, and then you have to work in a ton of time to finding companies, scrolling through solicitations and quoting, and then figuring out which ones work, which ones don't, and making lists of which companies you can work with, which ones you can't, and
Mm.
bidding on everything. And that takes
I
time.
just
And I
had a.
feel
I'm
like,
so sorry to interrupt you. I just had a brain fart idea that I just realized is gonna make you some money. Do you have your HubZone certification, by the way?
no, I was just working on that before I came here. But
Okay, good. Yeah, because
I
you
was
live on
just
a college
trying that.
campus,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a hub zone, and then you can prove that at
I was
least a
having
fair
trouble
number
with
of ways.
working on that just because I don't know, you have to submit some sort of some paperwork about like where you live, like the bills that like some
Yeah, the
bill
utilities
and like
and stuff like that.
yeah, I was trying to email like the HubZone desk and figure that out, and they weren't very helpful. So I'm gonna try again when I'm back in the States because
Reach
I
out to
definitely want
your
to get that.
reach out to the SBA office and now like the Apex accelerators because the HubZone desk they're not really good at that, but the SBA people are really good at that, and the Apex people are
Okay.
also really good at
Oh, the
that.
PTAC offices?
Yeah, PTAC, Apex,
Yeah.
whatever you wanna call them, they're really good at that. And then in our next session, I was just thinking about like the progression for you and your business because you're already a small business, and then you're gonna get your hub zone. And I was just thinking about like, okay, how do you what's the next step? And I was just thinking of like I had an idea. If you get your hub zone, there's another thing that you can do, which we'll discuss on the next call. But that was just
Okay.
I just had like a little brainchild right there in terms of like something that you can do to make some extra to increase your margins because with
Yeah,
the
I've been
hub zone
working
you
on
can
that.
be 10% higher, your bids can be 10% higher than the
Yeah, I
competition.
watched that YouTube video. I think you posted it recently. I don't really remember, but it was the one about like six or something certifications you can
Mhm.
have. And I saw the Hub Zone one, and I just like started working on it before I came out here. But I'm gonna try and get that finished whenever I get back.
Gotcha,
That would
gotcha.
be definitely helpful.
I do be putting value out there for free. I do put out
Yeah.
some good information in the free stuff that's on the channel. But sorry, I'm gonna let you continue. You were talking about your biggest challenge was like scheduling and structuring your day, and then having like a routine to submit your bids.
Yeah, I guess over a little bit of time it can get a little tiring, but I enjoy the work, so it's fitting in a ton of things to do and working like 10, 11, 12 hours a day. It could be tough, but it's also pretty fun because it's
It's
extremely
yours.
valuable. It's like a little child, growing this business, making it bigger. Uh,
That's what it takes though. Like I'll be honest, like that's what it takes if you want to like win and you want to win big, and then like early in the grand scheme of things, like that is just like what it takes. And I was gonna say unfortunately, but it's not unfortunately. It's unfortunate for all the other people who aren't like willing to put in the work. Alex Hormozy says he's like, when shit gets really hard, don't think poor me, think poor everybody else because they're going to have to fucking try and do what you do, right? So most of the other competitors that are going to be bidding on these items, they're not going to put in a 12-hour work day, right? They're not going to be sending all those emails to develop those relationships with those people. And like that just is what it is. Back when I was in school, my day was the same exact thing. And then it was like add another 3 to 4 hours on top of that of flight training. But in terms of like the school and then like the bidding, yeah, it's a 12-hour day. Like imagine somebody has a job instead of going to class. It's a 12-hour day. Like that's what it takes to win. That's what it takes to get a pie of like, a $300 billion industry and then win big and win earlier than everybody else. That's the nature of the beast. Like people, I think a lot of people come on YouTube looking for like a shortcut or something, or like looking for the answers. But like I think everybody knows what they need to do. Like everybody knows if you just show up and you work longer than everybody else and harder than everybody else for a prolonged period of time, you're gonna get the results. It's not a secret. Like it's not like fucking Space Jam and you're drinking like a bottle of Mike's like special stuff. It is what it is, and I think a lot of people know that, but maybe they live in denial. But I mean, Davis is here telling you, he's like, listen, bro, to win 11 contracts in 4 months, it's 12-hour days. Like that just is what it is. That's what it takes. So I think it's good for people to hear that also from like another young person, so that way it's like, listen, anybody can do it. Like you're in school, and it's not like you started the business with like a fuck ton of cash, and you're just like, yeah, I can throw money at whatever problem and make it go away kind of thing. That just those 12-hour days is just like what it takes to get the business off the ground.
So, Davis, tell us, final question. What would you tell someone who is looking to get started with DLA and is considering coaching?
Um, First of all, I would say if you are limited on capital, there are certain people who you won't be getting advice from. I would say Damon is probably one of the only people that I've found that is like cheap, extremely cheap relatively to all the other people who offer any information. And then I would say kind of just expect a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of information. It's not like a ton of, I mean, it's a lot of work, but the biggest gap is information. You have to learn a lot before you can even start. So, I mean, it's a lot of work and it's repetitive and you get used to it and it gets a lot easier, but the biggest gap is just like you have a lot of information to learn before you even start anything.
Yeah, I think that is a big thing is like, yeah, it's just an information gap, unfortunately. And then I think the biggest issue with it is because there's not that many people teaching it. And then a lot of the stuff, like, there's not really books out there. Like, you kind of just have to, like, go through it, learn it, and then, like, regurgitate it to other people. Like, I was doing business in the space for a whole year and a half before I was like, okay, I even know, like, enough to, like, even have conversations with people and just talk to them for like 20, 30 minutes and like give them the information that I knew. But like now it's 4 years. It's the only reason that we know this stuff is like after 4 years of being in the game, just because unfortunately there aren't really any handbooks out there. Like there's not like a step by step book that tells you like, hey, go there, do this kind of thing. So yeah, unfortunately, information is the biggest gap, and it's just like experience is really just like the best teacher. But yeah, do you have anything else that you want to say? Any last words for the audience? Any words of encouragement, or anybody who's like kind of on the fence about getting into this business?
Um, Try it out. I mean, what could you lose? You know, turn over every rock, check it out, see if it'll work for you. I mean, you have nothing to lose. It's fun starting a business. Try it. Why not?
What do you got to lose, guys? It's fun. Start a business. What do you got to lose?
Yeah,
So
it's really low cost in comparison to every other business model. So, I mean, it's the best opportunity. The amount of money that's able to be made is extremely large, and the upfront capital you need to start is extremely low. So it's a pretty nice business model, in my opinion.
It's way less risk than a brick and mortar business, right? It's way less risk than like a store or restaurant or something like that. And then in terms of like getting started, I mean, I don't like when people call it this, but like for lack of a better term, like you're not drop shipping because it's not like the material goes to somebody else, but you can make it that way later on in the process. But for the most part, it's pretty much like you're doing Amazon, but you're doing Amazon with like the biggest customer like in the world, and they tell you exactly what it is that they want. It's not like you have to guess about like what your customer base
And
wants.
then
Like
it
they
goes,
tell you verbatim, here's the shopping list. Here's what we want. Here's what you need to sell. So yeah, you guys heard it from the man himself first. What do you have to lose? Like try it, and then if it doesn't work, then oh well, you move on to the next one. But you've got absolutely nothing to lose, right? I think it's gonna cost you more money in terms of opportunity cost if you don't try. You know.
sure, I agree.
So that is all we have for you guys today. Davis, it was a pleasure. Um, let's
Thank
book
you.
our let's book our next session. I have some thoughts. I have some things that I want to discuss that are relative specifically to or that are specific to your business. But yeah, it was an absolute pleasure, and I'm glad that people were able to see you and hear your story and know that other young people who are in college can do this, because I think sometimes people get discouraged because they're like, oh, so many of the people in this space are like older, but it's like, dude, young people can do it too, and you're never going to be as young as you are now. You're never going to have as much energy as you're going to have in your 20s. So it's like, if there's a time to burn the
Exactly.
candle on both ends, it's in your 20s and your 30s. And then if you're watching this and you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s, you're not getting any younger. You're never we're recording this on August 1st, 2024. You are never going to get August 1st, 2024 back ever again. Once you go to sleep tonight and you wake up the next day and it's August 2nd, this day is gone. You're never going to get it back ever again. So you might as well do something. You might as well take action and do something, because every single day that you spend on the sidelines is a day that you wasted that you can't get back. There's two guarantees in life. We are all going to die, and there are no do-overs. So we know, one, our time is going to end, and we know, two, that we don't get a second chance at this thing. So you might as well make the most of the opportunity that you have. And like David said, start the business, try it. If it doesn't work, so what? You lost $1,000 in startup. You go back to your 9 to 5, and you make that in 2 days worth of work, or whatever the case may be, right? So thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Hmm.
Davis, it was a pleasure. Sam, thank you for helping me out, my man.
Thank you.
And yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. I'm not gonna run any sponsorship in this video. I'm not gonna pitch anything to you guys. Just like, comment, subscribe. Let us know if you guys like this content, and if you find anything valuable, or if you're inspired by Davis's story, comment down below. Let us know what you think. And yeah, it was an absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Not only am I looking forward to your success, I'm sure of it. Let's go print those dollars.